to a live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to this back-to-back episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime and another amazing panel coming your way. Carm said, don't whine about how many shows you've done today, but I will let you know we covered this press conference at 11 a.m. Eastern time. That was about an hour and a half. Just did an hour and a half show, and we are now doing another show. So it'll be the fastest 90 minutes of your life, but a long Monday, but happy to be spending it with STS Nation. No one else I'd rather be spending it with. With that said, the search for two moms murdered in Oklahoma now sadly appears to be over. The OSBI saying it recovered the remains of two bodies on Sunday. That would be yesterday. The medical examiner now working to determine cause and manner of death, the condition of their bodies when they were found or how they were found. That is anybody's guess. 4 people were arrested in connection with the disappearance of Veronica Butler and Jilian Kelley. They are Tad Cullum, 43, Tifany Adams, who is the grandmother of Veronica Butler's young children, Earl Twombly, 50, and Cora Twombly, and you're looking at them right now. I feel like anytime you've got a story out of the Midwest, like the Plains, that you've got to have one killer whose middle name is Earl. And this guy, Earl Twombly, fits the bill. I feel like there's always an Earl in there. Laura Ingle, by the way, is a NewsNation crime reporter. She's one of the best out there. And before that, worked as a correspondent for Fox News for 20 years. She started her career at KFI Radio, and she's going to be joining us. She's hustling back from the Trump trial, first day with jury selection there in New York City. But she was in Oklahoma last week and will join us to give us her perspective. Then you've got Dr. Michaela Samarosing, who's becoming a regular on our show. She owns the largest Oklahoma private investigation and processing server company. On top of that, she's a licensed teacher, principal, superintendent, and is an ardent advocate of civil rights for the oppressed. Last but not least, you've got Dr. J.P. Garrison. He earned a PsyD in clinical psychology from the Georgia School of Professional Psychology. He also has an MBA. Does all the medias. He's in Forbes, Vice, Huffington Post. And what I love about him, he studied the Korean culture for over a decade. And he's got his own amazing YouTube channel, Dr. G Explains, and he's got the best voice in the business. And for full disclosure, Dr. G and I are diehard MMA UFC fans. It was just UFC 300 this past weekend in Las Vegas. And it was not even arguably, the greatest knockout ever in UFC history, a 5-round fight where a knockout happened with 1 second left on the clock among 2 of the best fighters ever. An amazing moment for all fight fans. You guys probably think we're a bunch of brutes and idiots. Yes, we are following the sport, but we were texting like little kids all night, and I just lost Laura Ingle. So there you go. Michaela Samarosing, Dr. M, as I like to call you, probably the biggest case that you guys have had in a long, long time, if not ever, in this remote part of Nebraska and Oklahoma. I'm sorry, Oklahoma, not Nebraska. And just curious, your thoughts on this press conference earlier today where they revealed some new information.
Yeah, I think that information that they revealed was forthcoming, and it was about time, because they had kept kind of quiet while they were doing all the investigations. It was kind of like for example, like in the Brian Kohberger case, where they were all quiet and you didn't really hear anything from them. And then as soon as they moved in and they made the arrest on him, then it kind of blew wide open until the gag orders anyway, and they were talking about it, and you heard a lot of other things. I don't think it's surprising at all. And I said many times, I said, you really got to look at the family, because there's your biggest motive. I mean, even more so than even trafficking, which could be a possibility, but there's your biggest motive, the child custody dispute. And what do you have? It was grandma and the others. So that's what the police are saying anyway. But that just doesn't surprise me one bit.
Yeah. COE, child custody is always difficult, any which way you cut it. I do see Laura, COE. I'm going to leave it up to you to talk to her. I want to make sure she's prepared, but you can bring her in when you two have talked. Dr. G, this might be shallow of me, and someone said, why are you talking about the way they look? But this is, to me, straight out of the movie Deliverance here. But this guy on the left is 43 years old. And Laura, and give her this. Oh, you can't give her that, but you guys can privately chat. I didn't think of that, but I will try to reach out to Laura as well. She's just having some problems connecting. This guy on the left, Tad Cullum, Dr. G, he's 43 years old, and Grandma one over is my age. And so I don't know. It gave me a little hope for myself that I don't look like either of these people, but I also, more importantly, that I'm not acting the way they are. Dr. G, I ask you this question all the time, and I'm going to ask it again, not to be annoying, because I'm genuinely curious. How did these people, and especially in a small rural area, it's not like New York City where you can disappear into one of 20 billion apartments, but you're not going to get away with it anyway because you're dealing with NYPD. But how is it that someone from a small community thinks that they're going to murder two women and get away with it? What is going on here?
One thing that I've learned, and we have done so many different episodes on people involved in custody cases, but it seems to drive people insane. When you got bad people mixed with a bad custody case, it makes them get impulsive. They make bad decisions. They probably had a really stupid plan that they thought would work out well. It doesn't go exactly as they suspected. And they probably had some simple idea that they could go get rid of the bodies. There'd be no evidence. So I'm assuming they expected this to be some sort of master plan, and things just are never so simple. So people oftentimes overestimate their abilities, and I imagine that's probably what happened here.
And Dr. G, am I truly shallow that I'm looking at the guy on the left and feeling better about myself that I don't look like this, and I'm 11 years older than this guy?
Some of these folks look like they've had a pretty rough go of it so far. If you know, I'm older than a couple of these guys as well, so that's we do wear a lot of our life on our face sometimes, and they look pretty rough, honestly.
Shelly Beans here says meth does not make you prettier. I don't want to, completely rip them apart, but they probably deserve that and more for what they're accused of. Of course, they do have to go through the legal process. So, Michaela, back to you. Speaking of the legal process, and then I'll kind of break down and deconstruct the press conference from earlier today. We also have the PCA, otherwise known as the probable cause affidavit, which sheds some light onto what happened here. And I'll be honest, I just did a show before, so the COE is pulling that. And by the way, this is funny. Paula says that's why Carm keeps telling me to shave. This is true. I have to shave so I don't look like this guy on the left. Michaela, what can we expect? From what I understand, there's going to be a court appearance on Wednesday morning. They were brought into custody on Saturday. Is it typically that long a time before first appearance in Oklahoma?
Yeah, especially if it's on the weekend, because the judges and stuff, the courts are not open on the weekend. So, it's basically as if they were brought in today. It's going to be heard on a Wednesday. Basically is kind of what that is. And that's a pretty normal timeline. Yeah, they can vary depending on the crime, the size of the jurisdiction and availability of the judges, but that's pretty typical. It is important to note that, as bad as the evidence might look at the moment, that they're all presumed innocent until proven guilty, and that's important to keep in mind, even though it may look bad potentially. They haven't been convicted yet, even with the Duck Dynasty guy and the way that they look. That may not be helping their view, but that's a lot of out in the countryside. Kind of how people sometimes look, because they kind of live in a small community. I mean, like, they're not really entering the beauty pageants, and that's just kind of how some of the country folk look. I know, because I live out in the country. So,
well, you're braver than me, Machel. I was saying the other day, it looks so peaceful on that street corner, nothing out there. Laura Ingle spent some time out there. Hopefully, we're going to get her connected soon. Look at this. I love this from Haven Silver. I'm sorry, Joel, but I agree with you. I'm a sexy 58-year-old grandmother who looks way younger than them all. Their age was the first thing that caught my attention. Dang, they look gruesomely old. I did get yelled at earlier on saying, why are you talking about these people's looks? But I guess it's because I'm shallow. I don't know. It's more like just a glad they won't be on STS.
Well, you know, I think part of it, Joel, is that like we wear on the outside what we, you know, we want people to see a certain the way we look is how we want people to see us, right? So when you are unshaven, when you have these looks, that's what they want people to see. That's, the inside oftentimes is reflected on the outside. So it is notable when people have kind of stand out like this. So I always think it's worth paying attention to.
Someone, Jenny Price, actually brought this up. Michaela, to you, how on earth did this woman, Grandma Tifany Adams, how on earth did she have custody of these kids? She had a fairly extensive rap sheet. Her son, who's the father of Veronica Butler's children, I mean, he just got out of jail and he's in a mandatory rehab. But how on earth did this woman get custody?
Well, the disappointing thing that you learn when you see the court system and DHS, especially in a remote place like that, let alone in a place like Canadian County or Oklahoma County, or like Tulsa County, where you have even larger communities, there isn't a lot of oversight a lot of times. And it stinks because, like I said, I had a student in the third grade who is now deceased once, who was being raped and abused physically and sexually by his father and his half brothers and stuff. Terrible stuff. And they sent him to the grandparents that brought him right back to the parents, and now he's dead. I've seen stuff like that. So this does not surprise me whatsoever.
Sometimes at the expense of 4 accused killers, you have to have some fun. Ned Smith, let's take a bet on who has teeth. And this person encouraging me, Jennifer Jansen, who's here all the time. It's okay, Joel. They are horrifying to look at. So I'm getting some positive reinforcement, albeit I'm a shallow, horrible person that I'm looking at their looks. But it is, again, what they did that is just unforgivable, assuming that they will be, tried fairly in a court of law. So we're going to have to pay attention. People are already asking me to cover this trial, and you can bet your bottom dollar, as Annie said, that I will cover this trial. It's going to take some time until we even get to that point. But let's just go back in time for a moment here and recap some of the events to organize this, what I can tell is going to be a wild ride of a show. Saturday, there was a lot of motion with this story this weekend. Laura Ingle, who's still trying to connect, she was out there last week. And then her colleague, Nancy Liu, who's great over at NewsNation, she stayed over the weekend. And on Saturday, their cameras caught SWAT vehicle after SWAT vehicle after armored vehicle prowling this very remote area of Oklahoma. And they could even hear people, the law enforcement officers on loudspeakers saying, come out, we've got a search warrant. And they apprehended these 4 people. They took them into custody. And these are the people now charged with the murder of Veronica Butler and Jilian Kelley. What was very interesting to me at the press conference, Michaela, and correct me if I'm wrong, no one could say officially that the women found are the women because they've not been properly identified yet. Yet they were, all the agencies were offering their condolences to their family. So, Dr. Michaela, they have got to know, obviously, that it's them who they found in this rural part. but it has not been confirmed to them. So is that kind of a slippery slope there in any way?
I mean, I guess theoretically, yes, but that's the two women. And I mean, there's nobody else very super recently who has just absolutely gone missing. I mean, two adult women who have gone missing, and it's two females' bodies that they found. I've got sources who have confirmed that it's the two women, but they just don't want to say that till they finish it. But it is. It's the two women who are deceased.
And Michaela, have you heard anything else about how they were found, the condition of their bodies, anything along those lines? And I don't want to get gruesome here, but we bring it up in the show because there were reports, and these are just reports, that they were possibly dismembered or possibly fed. The two people on the right, by the way, they have a hog and pig farm. They also raise dogs. So there's the belief that these two people on the right, the Twomblys, helped them get rid of the bodies, possibly by way of a hog having its or their way with these bodies, which is a horrific thing to think about. Have you heard anything more about this, Michaela?
I have not, but if you look at the expression on the male Twombly, Cole Twombly's face, I mean, I know he's got a big bushy mustache, like from the 80s and stuff, but it almost looks like he's kind of smirking. I mean, you can't quite make that out, but if you look at the other three, I mean, you don't see that at all. But if you took off that mustache, I mean, that's just kind of my impression. At least he's not making a frown like the others are. But but
it's interesting. It's interesting because someone brought that up, that it does look like, appears that he has a smirk on there. He's not going to be smirking very long unless he flips on the boyfriend and girlfriend, grandma and her boyfriend, unless he is able to cut some kind of deal, because this guy more than likely is going to spend the rest of his life behind bars in a state prison.
Somebody has
go ahead.
Flipped. I mean, somebody has already flipped because they've already given up the location of the bodies. So I believe it's likely somebody is already trying to cut a deal, probably the ones who are not the shooters, maybe accessory after the fact or something. But I think it's very possible that somebody has already flipped on them, and probably not the main killers.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask you that, because how else? I mean, this is such a rural area, and they were able to pinpoint the bodies almost immediately after arresting these two. And you would think the only way they could have done that if they were directed to said bodies. So that's a great point, Michaela, that someone more than likely already flipped. And Cora Twombly, I believe, is the person that seems to be the lowest hanging fruit. I'm going to get to this finding so this is the probable cause affidavit, and the COE is actually just offering up some screenshots. Before we get to this, let's leave this up. COE, let me know, is Laura still having trouble? I assume she is, because I'm looking backstage. But Dr. G, child custody. I mean, we're doing the Adelson case. There's a case right now, Sebastian Rogers, where people, are suspicious, let's put it that way, of the biological mother and the stepfather. What is it about, that wasn't a child custody case, but what is it about these child custody cases? Of course, the Adelsons committed murder over it. What is it that gets people so irrational, so heated up, and illogical that they're not going to get caught?
And Shonda Gardner too, I think that's the name. I mean,
Shonda
there's
Gardner,
so many.
correct.
Yeah, right.
Correct.
So many of these have custody. So I've been involved in custody cases, and I mean this in as literal a sense as I can. I have done evaluations on all sorts of criminals. I am typically more concerned that I would be harmed by somebody in a custody case than I am by the murderers I evaluate, in all seriousness. Because when people, particularly when we're looking at people with personality disorders, people that are narcissists, antisocial, all of these different issues, they all crave control so desperately. And when the law is involved and they say, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do, when they set those very specific limits, they don't know how to process it and handle it. So they do things that they might not, well, they're capable of doing, obviously, but might not otherwise do, because they go, you know what, life's not worth living if I'm not in control. So I'm just going to act with impunity. I'm going to go hurt somebody. I'm going to do whatever. And so it's custody is unique in the sense that it legally sets up guardrails that they can't do anything about. So yeah, it gets very frustrating for people that need control.
I think I need control, but not to that extent. Wildfire here. So many people destroyed because of these 4 people. It's always the kids. Obviously, Veronica and Jilian are no longer with us. They're the ultimate victims. But now Veronica had 4 children, and 2 children, and Jilian 4 children. So now there's 6 children that are motherless, which is just, almost inexplicable. We're looking here at the probable cause affidavit, and you can see the charges here levied against Tifany Adams. She's grandma. Count 1, murder in the first degree. Count 2, murder in the first degree. Count 3, kidnapping. Count 3, kidnapping. Count 4, kidnapping. Count 5, conspiracy. Michaela, these are the most serious charges. What does this mean in Oklahoma?
We've had many clients that we've represented, guilty, innocent, and otherwise, who have been charged with first-degree murder. And that typically means that if you're convicted, like, you're never getting out. And if it's like the capital murder, like you're going to quite possibly face the death penalty. If it's like, you're killing a police officer, or there's all these activated circumstances. One thing that I think it's interesting, and I just confirmed it with an FBI colleague of mine, David Otwell, who was in the FBI, well, technically of Vietnam police, but he was on loan to the FBI for like 20 years after that. But one thing that I noticed is that they were charged with kidnapping. Mm-hmm. Now, if the alleged killers, whomever killed them, let's just say, did kill them right there in the car, they wouldn't be guilty of kidnapping if they just transported their bodies after the fact. So to be charged with kidnapping, the state of Oklahoma can do like whatever it wants, and I've seen that happen too. But legally, from a legal standpoint, they would only be charged with kidnapping if they were still alive when they took them somewhere. So I think it's interesting, and it's telling that they're charging them with kidnapping as well. So.
Frankie Figs, by the way, always ahead of me. It's in the PCA that they were buried. I just honestly haven't had a chance, but we're going to look at it together here. Laura Ingle, there was just a comment that this group, and welcome to Laura Ingle, NewsNation's crime reporter. She's a veteran crime reporter with Fox News for 20 years. She's covered the biggest crimes of the last couple of decades. There's a word on the street that they were part of a group called the Misfits, I think, or something along those lines. What do we know about this group?
So we've heard, and sorry for the delay in getting on with you guys. Been anxious to talk to you because I've been in Oklahoma covering this and talking to Dr. M, who gave me some time to discuss this case. It was God's Misfits, and that's what's in the probable cause affidavit. And when I was in the women's hometown, and when we were in the surrounding areas, and so many people, you've probably been talking about this and seeing this, nobody wanted to go on camera. Nobody wanted to speak. I have never, in my decades of covering crime, have ever been to an area where not one single person would go on camera. And everybody was talking about, just the general feel of who these people could be. And I did keep hearing they're part of God's Misfits. And I said, what is God's Misfits? And, you guys have probably been talking about the sovereign citizens, but in this affidavit that you're going through, that I'm still getting through myself, you have to read it and reread it again because it reads like a horror movie. But God's Misfits is this group that got together, and they got together at Cole and Cora's house. That's where they had their worship, if you will, or their meetings. And, God's Misfits sounds like it's part of this, it's just a kind of this anarchy group that doesn't believe in laws, that doesn't adhere to any laws. That's what I got from the locals. We'll have to dig a little deeper into that, but we heard a lot about God's Misfits when we were there.
Yeah, and I want to get to Laura and her experience on the ground in Oklahoma, but to the psychologist, Dr. G. Um, so you just heard about God's Misfits, which I know nothing about, and I'm going to obviously look at this PCA closely, and we will look at some of it together tonight. But they're also said to be, at least some of them, sovereign citizens, which basically means they don't believe the law applies to them. What is going on with this psychological profile? People like this who are sort of anarchists, don't believe in government. Do they not believe that any rules apply to them?
Yeah, in essence, it goes back to that whole idea of control, is that in theory, the idea of being a sovereign citizen is no one can control me, but it's really people that want to be in absolute control. So people that really need and desire control over others are the ones that tend to be attracted to becoming sovereign citizens, that don't fall into that normal range and deciding to be a part of society. So just that alone does give us some part of their psychological profile for sure. It attracts a certain group.
I like this comment. I don't know if it's Twa or Twa. I'm going to go with Twa Thomas. They are definitely God's misfits. When you see the photo, you kind of have to, I don't know, agree, I guess. Laura Ingle. So I talked to you when you told me you were right before you were shipping out to Oklahoma. And then you got there, we were texting a little bit. I know, obviously, the cell service is not the best. Before we get into the case, just what was your impression of this part of Oklahoma?
Well, I'm from California, and I do have family members who have cattle ranches. So this territory was familiar to me in terms of, these long 2-lane roads with fencing and flat land and lots of pasture and cows and horses. And I had known that was where we were going. I had never been to the Oklahoma Panhandle before. And it was Dr. M who was one of the many people who warned me about going out to this area. Make sure that you tell people where you're going, make sure that people know where you are, which of course gave us a little bit of a hesitation, because she's right and everybody else is right. When you get out there, there is nothing. We have been talking about and showing you the pictures and images of that abandoned gas station where this child custodial handoff was supposed to be. I walked the path where the vehicle was found. I thought when I got there, it was going to be marked that it was right off the Highway 95. In fact, it was 1,000 feet in. And that's a good clip. That's a good distance. So I thought, my goodness, if they were having car trouble, if somebody even pushed them off the road somehow, it looked a lot different when you were there, boots on the ground. But my impression of it is it's country. It's beautiful in many spots. But once you get out there and you look at the silos, and you look at the barns, and you look every which way, and Oklahoma's super flat, as we know, you realize there is nothing and no one around. There's no phone, there's no camera on any kind of structure that you can see. And the deeper you get down into this area, you realize you are really, really alone.
Wow, that's kind of scary. This I did not know about. I'm Dr. Machel. I'm curious if you did, from Debbie Gibby. This wasn't the first time, at least some people in this group tried to kill Veronica Butler. In February, they tried at her house, but she wouldn't come out. Had you heard this, Michaela? Are you aware of this?
I have not. It does not surprise me from a case standpoint, from a psychological standpoint. I mean, that they were just now successful, because usually most people don't just go off and do one bad thing out of the blue. It's usually a series of things, and it can be progressive. For example, strangulation is typically a precursor to murder. So it's usually steps. I mean, like with child molestation, well, there's usually child pornography first, for example. I mean, there's always a series of steps. So I've not heard it, but it doesn't surprise me at all.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to pull up parts of this PCA, and I will weave all the guests in. And this is going to challenge my eyesight right here. But I actually have so much smudge on my on my glasses. I have to lift it up. But yada, yada, yada. It says, on or about the 30th day of March, 2024, and then and there willfully, unlawfully, and feloniously without authority of law, aid and abet in the death of Veronica Butler, who was lured to the location of Highway 95 in Rodell in Texas County, Oklahoma, and certain mortal wounds were inflicted, and Veronica Butler did in fact die as a result of the wounds inflicted. The crime is punishable by death, imprisonment for life, or imprisonment for life without parole. By aiding and abetting in the commission of the deliberate and intentional taking away of the life of a human being on or about the 30th day of March, and then they're willfully, blah, blah, blah. Jilian Kelley did in fact die as well as a result of the wounds inflicted. Laura, do we have a better sense? This is a PCA, so there's a lot of legal jargon in there, but do we have a better sense, Laura, from your sources, and we'll continue on with the PCA in a moment, but any better sense of how this played out, how this went down?
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, the details that are in this PCA are so disturbing when you go through and you read what you just read and the other parts about the stun guns that were purchased and the burner phones, and the idea that, kidnapping is on the chart here. Now it's on the list. So we all thought, I think, for the most part, most people believed that whatever happened to these women most likely happened to them in the car, because we heard about pools of blood. We heard about broken glass. None of it was confirmed because the OSBI wouldn't tell us much. But now we've got the charge of kidnapping, and we've got the list of items that these people had, these suspects, the stun guns, the burner phones. So what does that mean? And the kidnapping charges. So did they take them on Highway 95 and Road L, then go do something? And that is a terrifying idea that, that would mean torture. That would mean the idea of fear of these two women being taken from their car. We just don't know until we know more from investigators. And we might hear more on Wednesday when they're all in court. But this is a whole new thing. This adds another layer of terror to this story that was not known just yesterday.
Yeah. Laura, I mean, you and I both know when we were at Fox News Channel, when we would go to areas that were, let's say not secure, I can just right off the top of my head, I covered some very major protests in Baltimore and riots in North Carolina. We would always have security. Were you with security on this trip, Laura, or were you just with your crew?
I was just with my crew.
And were there moments where you really felt very unsafe?
Many.
There you go. So by the way, this is just to let people know that being a reporter can be a very dangerous job. And kudos to Laura Ingle for going out there and facing it head on. We're going to get to the press conference. I'm going to break that down, but let's look at this. The OSBI investigation showed that Adams, that is Granny, searched for gun shops on her cell phone. A search of local gun shops showed Granny Adams buying 5 stun guns at the Big R store in Guyman, Oklahoma. The purchase was made on March 23rd, 2024. OSBI investigation showed that Grandma purchased 3 prepaid cellular phones from Walmart in Guyman on February 13th, 2024. The phones were identified by phone numbers, yada, yada, yada. Related search warrants for the information related to location services and phone usages were completed for each device. Basically here, the COE letting us know the graphic shows that Granny Adams bought 5 stun guns. She also bought 3 burner phones. Michaela, this speaks to premeditation, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yes. If they are indeed the killers, then it definitely speaks to premeditation, and I mean the evidence that we're already seeing looks to be fairly strong. But like Laura said, it'll be interesting to see what they have on Wednesday during their arraignment, because I think we'll see a lot more come out, both while in court and from the prosecution and the sheriffs and the others. And I think it's going to get very interesting.
Yeah, and I'm just writing a. Do you plan to go to that arraignment by any chance, Michaela?
I haven't been asked to yet.
That's going to be. I'm sorry. That's going to be in Texas County.
Right.
Yeah. And where in Texas County is that? It's a small little town, I imagine.
I believe that would be in Guyman, but I'd have to check because
Mm-hmm.
I think Guyman is probably the biggest city up there. That's where we own the land, and it's like the biggest city. So I would think in Guyman is probably where that's going to be at. So I mean, that's just right up in the panhandle. Like there's nobody really up there, as you all know, especially Laura. There's just no one up there.
Yeah.
Well, and I
Michaela,
want to thank you, Dr. M. Michaela had told me one of the greatest things that the lesson that I learned when I was in Oklahoma, and I just want to say thank you here and now to you, Doctor, because you had said to me, you were the first person I called when I got on the ground. I did live shots outside of the OSBI my first day there. Then we took a 5-hour drive and we stopped. Joel, you'll love this. We were stopping and we were doing live shots. We would pull over, do a live shot, get back in, pack things up, keep driving for an hour, pull over on the countryside. That's how we were doing it to get to Guyman and then to the Four Corners and then to Highway 95. But Michaela said to me, and this is a lesson that we should all learn from this, is, basically to file a flight plan, which is what she told me to do. And what I did. I called the assignment desk. I told them where we were going, when we were expected to be there, when we were expecting to leave, and even took the extra step of giving them our license plate numbers of our rental cars. Because, once you get out there and you're like, if it's a rental car, we don't know who these people are. That's what we did. And so thank you, Dr. M, for telling me to do that.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And I'm just glad that you're safe.
That's great advice from Dr. M. I've been in those situations too. And you're so, as a journalist, just brings me back. But when you're reporting in the field like this, the way Laura was just describing it, I remember all the violence that happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. Same thing happened to us. We had to literally get in a news vehicle from DC and drive down to Charlottesville, but all along the way they wanted to report on the story, so we had to keep pulling over. And Laura was doing the same thing. The only difference is Charlottesville is civilization. Here she's in the middle of nowhere, so she had to let her team and NewsNation know that she's safe. But again, reporting can be a very dangerous business. I'll be surprised, and I shouldn't say this, I don't want to jinx anyone, that there aren't more, obviously with international reporters who are in war zones, you see it all the time, but a lot of reporters put themselves in harm's way just in this country every day. Hey, Ruby here, someone was asking about stun guns, but 5 stun guns, are they so easy to get? Are they monitored in any way? Who in rural circumstances needs 5 stun guns? Michaela, someone was also asking, what is the difference between a taser and a stun gun, if any, and are they restricted? Do you have to have a license? Can you just go out and buy them?
Yeah, there is no license. I've actually had to shoot something with a stun gun once. But the tasers are basically like your handheld thing. So a taser is just basically in your hand. The stun gun, I don't ever use them. I mean, they're safer than they are less lethal than a regular firearm, but I prefer pepper gel, as I was telling Laura, because it sticks better and you can shoot it several times. But you can just order it off the internet and it can come to your house and you have it. There's no license. I mean, you don't even have to have a license for a firearm here in the state anymore. I mean, you can just get one if you're of age, and especially for a taser. I mean, you don't have to have anything either. One of the disadvantages about the tasers, though, is you only get one shot. And if it misfires, it doesn't shoot whatever. Once that shot is gone, you have to take it out, put in a new one. And even once you shoot somebody with a taser, you have to keep holding it and pressing that thing, or the effect will wear off. So it's not a permanent. It doesn't last for 30 minutes, an hour, like you see in the movie. Sometimes it's like maybe 5 minutes, maybe. And if you're not continually pressing it, then they're fine and they get back up. So.
By the way, here in the great state of Florida, you might be shocked to know you don't need a concealed carry permit or anything. You can just go out and buy a gun. Someone was kind of poking fun at Walmart, the people who go to Walmart before they commit crimes. It seems like so many people go to Walmart. I've got advice for you. If you're going to commit a crime, don't go to Walmart, because they've got like 10,000 cameras every 3 feet, and they're going to catch you. There's more cameras in a Walmart than there are in a casino. Dr. G, Philadelphia shoulder surgeon, friend of the show. She had an interesting question. She wanted to know, since they proclaim themselves to be God's misfits, does that also assume that these people are narcissists to give themselves that level of acclamation and credit that they are God's misfits? Do they think very highly of themselves?
I would presume. I mean, you see a lot of language like that in cults. I've done a lot of research on cults, and in my counterterrorism program, that's a lot of what I learned about. And using a title like God's Misfits, the implication is I don't have to answer to anyone but God, basically. So it's a way to sort of show off that sovereign citizen side of things as well. So the implication is you have no control over me. I don't care what you say or do, or your laws are irrelevant to me, that kind of thing. And on the stun gun side of things, I mean, my first thought is that they probably don't need stun guns. So I assume those were used to torture, or I hate to even go there, but I would assume, what else would they need 5 stun guns for?
Laura, any thoughts on that? I mean, probably just to incapacitate them, maybe initially.
I mean, the bottom line is we just don't know. We know now what they had. We know now where they were found, 8.5 miles from the location where their vehicle was, in very rural Oklahoma. They wouldn't tell us at the press conference. I heard a little bit of it, and remember, I was covering the Trump trial today, so I was listening to the press conference while I was outside of the Trump criminal trial. And what caught my eye is that, there were questions. There wasn't a ton of new information other than just, talking about the arrest, talking about that they are working on identifying the bodies. We still don't have confirmation. But we know that now that it was 8.5 miles away, but the OSBI PIO wouldn't say if it was on private land or not. We're assuming it was, but we don't know until they tell us. So, there was a lot, when I was in town, when I was in Hugoton, and there were so many people talking about what could have happened to them. And so many people were hopeful. And I want to say one thing about the people that I met in the ladies' hometown is that these are really good people. And there's this juxtaposition. There's the people who are out there, the lawlessness that's going on with these suspects, these alleged suspects of what they've done. But the other people, we saw the congregants of the church circle the home of the pastor, who is the husband of Jilian Kelley, and they just literally circled the home, held hands, and prayed and sang for that family. And the people of this town are just devastated. So while we paint the picture of being out there in this remote area, I just want to say that the people of this area there are many loving people who are just simply gutted and devastated over this.
And Ronnie from Missing Person PNW, this question is for Laura again. Will media be allowed for the hearings? Do we know if there are cameras in court in Guymon, Oklahoma?
I'm not sure of that. I have only been able to look through this initial paperwork. I can tell you that we are staying on the ground in Oklahoma. You'll have Brian Enton, who will be there, who's one of the best crime reporters in America, and he will be at that hearing, from what I've been told from our assignment desk. And if anybody's going to get in there and tell you about it, it's going to be him.
Kudos to Brian, who's been on the show a few times. For full disclosure, he's a good friend of the COE, and he is as good as they get when it comes to crime reporting. Almost a household name in this country, Brian Enton, when it comes to crime reporting. Laura, I'm just curious because I can feel what you went through, having been in somewhat similar situations. I was a little cub reporter, beat reporter in Tucson, Arizona, and not to throw a town under the bus, but I will. There's a place called 3 Points. It kind of reminds me of this place when I look at it, and it is just a town in the middle of nowhere in the Sonoran Desert. And I remember one time having to cover, I think it was a murder, and I mean, it's straight out of a movie. I went up to, it was a trailer home, Mostar, and there's a bucket on like the little porch that they built. And in that bucket was a rifle, and literally hanging on the trees as decorations were Budweiser cans. And I am not joking when I say this. And it was something that literally looked like a scene out of a movie. But I remember it was scary. It was kind of terrifying. You just take a leap of faith, and this is local news. So there's no security. no one
Right.
there to help you, and we were just doing our thing. But I was going to ask you, I mean, do you feel apprehensive if they asked you to go back out there to cover this trial because it's so small, because people already know who you are out there? Does it make you nervous to think about going back out there?
Well, I think that others are going to be handling it from here on out, just because of the heavy load that we have in New York City right now with Trump, and I've got Rex Heuermann's hearing this week and Scott Peterson. But
when's Rex in court? I can't keep track of all of it.
Wednesday, and Scott Peterson's tomorrow.
COE, did you hear this? Scott Peterson tomorrow, Rex Heuermann on Wednesday. We should know this, but we fly by the seat of our pants here.
Right.
At STS.
Well, I'll just say this, we are very careful as an organization, as people. We've had separate teams that we've kind of all been together. So look, we don't want to reveal everything, but we are taking precautions. And I think the advice that Dr. Machel has given us in terms of just, letting people know where you are, making sure you have enough gas in the tank. That's a big one for this area. For anybody listening who's going to go cover this, make sure that you have gas in your car, make sure that you have cell service, have a couple of different phones that are Verizon, AT&T, because they don't always work. Make sure that your phones are juiced up, that you've got a way to charge it, make sure that you've got the right cords, all of those things. So I think, and really, I think that's the kind of thing that we should all be mindful of, no matter really where we go, but especially if you're going out anywhere in the country, anywhere in America.
Well said. I am going to get to this press conference. I promise you that, but we've got to, you've got to feel for the people in Hugoton, Kansas. This is where the two mothers were living and were from. Dr. G, how does a super small but extremely religious community process this? I mean, it's sort of a blessing in disguise in that they have such deep faith. Is this going to help them?
Definitely. And I think in some ways, I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that they all knew the God's Misfits probably were capable of doing some not so good things, potentially. I know it's just alleged at this point. And so the when things are shocking, when they're totally unexpected, it's much harder on the community. When it's somebody or a group that you go, yeah, those people are capable of something bad, it tends to actually be a little easier to process. So it'll be tough, but I think they'll be all right.
And this is a really interesting question that was up and then we dropped it. I'm glad it came back here. Dr. G, I can process Granny's motive. Oh, that's a custody issue. But how about the others? You got the boyfriend and you've got these other two. Is it the group mentality and sense of loyalty? Is it that they were super fearful of grandma, maybe? What do you think is at play here?
The fact that they've got this God's Misfits group, that would be my guess. When you're part of a group, that makes you capable of doing a lot worse things than you might do on your own. So when that's one of the challenges. If you have one person in a group that's willing to go further than everybody else, everybody gets dragged to that extreme. So I think it's more of a group mentality. It's more of that cultish sort of group that they had. And they just felt like, well, this is what we do. And they could have just, there's a dangerous synergy between them, probably.
Matt Montoya, if I'm reading that right. I'm from here, driving by Four Corners right now. It's not too scary, but people sure think that they will never get this kind of attention way out there. And this is going to be a case that rocks this entire area. Laura, I know, by the way, Laura, I'm not getting political. I don't want to get political. Not covering Trump, but what was the atmosphere like? This is the first time a former United States president was in criminal court. What was the atmosphere like around the courthouse?
Well, it was energized. There was a lot going on today. We had dual protests. We had supporters of the former president right outside of the courthouse of the criminal court, and flags and megaphones and music and T-shirts and signs. So there was a lot of that. And then there was also people who support the system who were, supporting the prosecutors, I should say, holding up signs saying no one is above the law. There was less of them, more Trump supporters. And then we had this huge we had a vehicle that was going around with a bunch of Trump flags, and probably any city in America might have somebody who has a lot of those flags on their vehicle. So we had a lot of music, a lot of chanting, and that was the energy. But in terms of Media Row, and Joel, you and I know this well, when you're out there on a big story and it's one complete city block of just cameras, lights, and producers and reporters and tents and umbrellas, and it was packed. It was the world's media. It was absolutely one of the busiest I've ever seen in Lower Manhattan.
Wow. And that's saying something, because there have been massive cases there. I can vividly remember being at Hillary Clinton's party, what was supposed to be a party in 2016. That's where I was sent at the Jacob Javits Center in New York. Same thing, just as far as the eye could see, cameras and reporters all positioned. And then as the night grew, that was Vicky, please no one's talking politics. I'm just telling you our experience reporting on these things. But they are media spectacles. Let's put it that way. I've covered the Pope. I covered the Pope in Philadelphia, the longest line of reporters you could ever imagine, going all the way through the city of Philadelphia, covering his every move. It's just, it's wild to be part of something that's that big, a media spectacle. Here we go. I was just going to ask you, COE, found at crime scene. Blood found on the roadway, Veronica Butler's glasses, a broken hammer, a pistol magazine inside Jilian Kelley's purse. That's interesting. So she had something, but wasn't obviously able to use it. Veronica Butler told family members, again, this is from the PCA, the probable cause affidavit. Butler told family members she was going to pick up her children from Adams at 1,000 hours, I think is what it says, at Four Corners. This is the intersection. Kelley left Hugoton, Kansas, and traveled to Highway 95. On and on it goes. The family began looking for Butler. Melissa and Joey Padilla, who were Butler's family members, located Butler's abandoned vehicle just west of the intersection of Highway 95 and Rodell, which is where Laura was. The Padillas then contacted law enforcement at 12:09 hours. An examination of the vehicle and area surrounding the vehicle found evidence of a severe injury. Blood was found on the roadway and edge of the roadway. Butler's glasses were also found in the roadway south of the vehicle near a broken hammer. That can't be pretty, a broken hammer. A pistol magazine was found inside Kelley's purse at the scene. Pistol magazine, but no pistol was found. Laura, you were at the scene. You saw that the car was like 1,000 feet off the road, but now hearing these details, that there was blood, broken hammer, this pistol magazine that she was carrying inside Kelley's purse, it kind of brings to life this scene. What does it do for you, having been there?
Well, all of it is so incredibly sad. I mean, we are out there doing our jobs, but we're also humans, right? And so when you are out there, and we went out there, we were trying to beat daylight when we did the Road L thing. And so it was getting dusky and the sun was setting and it was getting dark. And this happened during the day, and in the middle of the, in the morning, right? So when you're off the road and you're thinking about these things that were found, and I just keep putting myself there. I'm standing on the dirt road. I can hear the crunch of the gravel underneath my feet. I can see the cross to my right where their names were on the cross, that somebody put a makeshift memorial, and it's growing now. Nancy Liu, who is fantastic, and her producer Dana Levitt, who have been there after they took over when I left, and they have done fantastic reporting. And they were the ones that got that incredible video of the SWAT teams. I just want to give a shout out to them because their experience was just completely incredible. But when I'm standing there on that road and I'm thinking about the things that were found, it plays out like, I don't know. It's a horrible thing to think about what happened. You hope that whatever happened to them was quick. Now, hearing the things that were there, it doesn't sound like it was quick. Will we ever know? There's no cameras, unless there's a big confession, which we hope will happen. And somebody will tell us, what went on. I don't know if the families even want to hear that. It's pretty bad. It sounds like it's as bad as it gets.
Yeah, it sounds like something a horror movie is made of. Sassy Girl, this is for Laura, but let's flip it over to Michaela. Michaela, had you heard about the use of a hammer? And imagine the force you have to hit someone with to break a hammer.
Well, that's right. I mean, now whether they also use that to break the windows and the windshield or whatever on the vehicles, I mean, that's possible too. But yeah, I mean, and depending on the size of the hammer, I mean, the bigger the hammer, yeah, I mean, that would be even more surprising if it broke, because you would have to hit something pretty hard to break a hammer, because that's what they're made for. But it just looks like it was all planned out, potentially by all four of them. I mean, premeditated. I mean, because like even with Cora and Cole, I mean, that they were going out trying to block the road so they couldn't get out, and then the others just went and killed them. I mean, that looks pretty bad.
Yeah. Bella's right. COE does a fantastic job. Her IQ is probably 100 points higher than me. She's quick, very quick. She can pull information up like nobody I've ever seen. This is one more piece of the PCA here. I'm just a civilian on a computer trying to manage Joel, the dogs, the kids. So Cora Twombly describes blah, blah, blah. This whole thing is part of an anti-government group that had a religious affiliation. Through OSBI investigation, it was learned that they call their group, we talked about this, God's Misfits, regular meetings held weekly at the Twomblys. Those are two of the arrestees and the home of Barrett and Lacey Cook, two other people. And it goes on here. It says Cora and Cole Twombly were not home, but they came home around 1200 hours. They knew that Cole and Cora took a blue and gray Chevrolet pickup owned by them and a blue flatbed pickup owned by Clint Twombly when they left and returned in the same vehicles. CW was told to clean the interior of the Chevrolet pickup. CW asked Cora what had happened and was told that things did not go as planned, but that they would not have to worry about Veronica Butler again. CW was told that Cora and Cora blocked the road to stop Veronica Butler and Jilian Kelley and divert them to where Adams, Cullum, and Grice were. CW asked about Kelley and why she had to die and was told by Cora that she wasn't innocent either, as she had supported Butler. CW asked Cora if their bodies were put in a well, and Cora replied something like that. CW also disclosed that other attempts to kill Butler occurred during February. Laura, I know you got to run. Thank you so much. Any final thoughts, Laura?
I just, as we watch, for this case to unfold, and we just all hope for justice. When I was heading out there, I was thinking about 6 children not having their mothers as we were searching for them and as the search was going on. And, when I got there, it was, you asked me what it was like to be out there. Aside from it being so desolate, the one thing that was just hit me really hard was that there was no grid search going on. There was no, I thought we were, and to your point, like, what was it like going out there? And it was really desolate. And I knew that was going to happen, but I kind of thought when I got there that I was going to see, canines and a command post and a grid search and volunteers and tables and pictures and all the things that we see when we cover these stories. And, and I'm not kidding when I say that I saw tumbleweeds going down the 2-lane highway. When I stood there and I thought, yeah, there are literal tumbleweeds, and it was quiet and the wind was whistling as I was standing there on the 4 corners at that gas station. I thought, oh my God, there's not a search. Something's really, really wrong. And then I just flashed to the image of 6 kids, and Jilian had older children, but 2 little kids, 4 kids at this church. And, your heart is just with everybody as they go through this. And, we're humans too, as we report this, and we try to bring facts, and we want to watch justice unfold for these people. And so that's what I think about. And if you want to see some of my coverage, I've got it on my socials. I took a lot of pictures and a lot of videos and did a lot of walk and talks if you want to see that.
Instagram is Laura Ingle TV, and Twitter is Laura Ingle TV. Is that right?
Twitter, X is just Laura Ingle. Ingle. Thank you.
Okay. X is Laura Ingle, and on Instagram, and I follow Laura super closely. It is Laura Ingle TV on Instagram. But
Right.
Laura is arguably the best in the country at crime reporting. So follow her, and love being friends with her. And she always is very generous with her time with us. So thank you, Laura. We'll get you back on hopefully real soon.
Okay. Thank you guys very much for having me. And we'll wait to see what happens on Wednesday. And I'll be watching your show as well, Joel, and listening to you guys.
Thanks, Laura. Appreciate it.
All right.
So to the press conference now. This was a very odd press conference. I'm not going to pull sound bites, but they basically came out. These were the different organizations. It was the OSBI, the director there, and then the FBI. The head of the director of the OSBI in Oklahoma is Angela Spurlock, and Dr. Michaela. She came out and said, look, we've been working for the last 2 weeks to bring closure. Didn't end the way we hoped. It's a tragedy for everyone involved. So grateful to my agents who work 24 hours a day. Our condolences go out to the family. She used the word closure, which is minor but very major, because I don't think the families ever get closure. But from a more sort of macro perspective, considering they now have 4 people in custody, it happened relatively quickly. What do you think about this investigation from what we know so far? It seems to be pretty solid at this point.
Yeah, it looks like, especially because it was across several states and it got so much media attention, I think that there was a lot given to it right away. And it took them about two weeks. But you're also talking about a really small town with not a lot of suspects and a lot of motive. So, I mean, I applaud what they did, and I think that's great from all of the agencies, the OHP, the OSBI, the FBI, the sheriff's departments in Texas and Cimarron County. I think that's great what's been done. And if these are indeed the killers, as I believe they likely are, then I'm very relieved that they're off the street, because we don't need people who are murdering others. And I feel terrible for the victims and those affected by it.
The press conference was a nothing burger. That's sort of somewhat true. There was a couple of things, and I'll go through it. There was mention, by the way, Michaela, of a guy named Grice, Grice. And in reading the affidavit very quickly here, it seems like he had some involvement. How come this guy wasn't arrested?
I haven't heard of anything by a gentleman named Grice. I had only heard of the 4 that they had arrested. That is curious. I would be interested to know, though, if perhaps he was the one who had possibly been working with the police or tipping off the police, and that's maybe why he wasn't arrested. I mean, I don't know. But I'm not quite sure what his role in all of this is yet.
May I request a session with Carm or Dr. G after all the shows today on STS? Dr. G, that's actually a good point. I mean, we're just talking about Maddie Soto, 13 years old, presumably unalived by her mother's boyfriend. Then you've got custody battle, 2 women in the middle of nowhere, basically executed. What do you say to people who are, because listen, true crime fans are diehard. We've got Crime Con coming up. I mean, people are really invested in this. What's your advice to them about managing and balancing all of this?
You just got to listen to how you feel. Like, if you catch yourself if it's starting to feel too heavy, it's okay to take a break. The content will be there. But when you come back, and I think it's easy for us, like, because there's some stories that really energize me and that I'm interested in and excited about, and some just feel heavy and dark. The Madeline Soto case, that's been a hard one to get
heavy. Can I take the next 7 weeks off if it's feeling heavy, or no?
Sure, why not? I mean, you might, your audience might not be so happy, but you could do it.
No, dealing with the children, that's where it gets really tough on me. But also just dealing with 2 innocent moms who are basically just murdered in the most horrific way. Michaela, are we hearing anything else? Because this is another gruesome part of this case, is that they were, and now the affidavit I think is showing otherwise, because it looks like they were buried and there was cement involved. But any talk at all still about the hog theory that maybe they were fed, or that's off the table now?
I haven't heard anything further about the hog theory one way or the other. But the cement thing doesn't, I mean, it doesn't surprise me very much either. I mean, that would be the way that they were kind of trying to bury the individuals so they couldn't be found, or it would be really difficult to find them, or whatever. I mean, that sounds just as country as the hog story.
Michaela, how far are you from where this car was abandoned, roughly?
Which mean where I live or where my office is?
Or your office.
Well, from the office, it's probably 5 hours away.
5
But my
hours
office
away.
is out of Oklahoma City, so it's a good distance away. I live in the countryside closer, and I've got land in Guyman, so I mean Guyman's pretty close to where this happened. I mean, it's right where the court stuff is going to be happening on Wednesday. So
I assume you know where that Walmart is in Guyman, right?
I've been there before. I've shopped at that Walmart.
Look at this from Black Widow has to take a shot at me. Try it, workaholic Joel. You wouldn't last without the adulation, drama, and stirring up chaos. That's probably true. It's probably true. Does that make me a narcissist, Dr. G?
Well, and a serious answer to that question, that being a narcissist is all about grandiosity. I think that you enjoy the audience, but I don't think of you as an actual grandiose person. So no, I don't think you're a narcissist.
I do enjoy the audience, but I also, if there weren't murders happening there, I also like that quiet plot of land in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. Dr. G, one of the things I was thinking about, I basically grew up in suburban New Jersey. New York City was kind of home to me. That's where my mom would drag me to plays, et cetera, et cetera. But now we're talking about very small, very rural areas. What's like growing up in a place like this in Oklahoma compared to growing up in New York City? What does it do to the psyche of the two different people? I mean, everyone in New York's type A, everyone's rushing around. The other day, I was planning travel with Cora for the book tour, and I knew right away that the woman was from Jersey or Philly because she was yelling at me. But what is, without knowing me, but is there a way to psychologically divide rural America from metropolitan America?
Sure. I grew up in I grew up in a really small town.
Really?
So, and a lot of my family members lived in North Carolina and South Carolina. And so I've lived Tennessee and all these places. And I still, when I travel to these, I mean, I only live an hour away from Deliverance territory, like literal Deliverance territory. So all those references.
How come you don't have that funny Southern accent?
I don't know. It's a good question. Everybody else around me did, but it's people in smaller towns are just a lot more community oriented. They're more connected with each other. They feel a little bit more responsible for each other, I think, in small towns. So it's just a different feel. It can at times make you feel like insiders versus outsiders, like your group versus everybody else. Like I lived in Savannah too, and it's like if you weren't old money in Savannah, like you were always kind of held on the outside. So I do think that you feel like you're more part of a group in terms of literal people, rather than some of the bigger cities where like the cities like New York the city has its own personality, right? Whereas the small towns, it's not so much like that.
Michaela's going to be right back. Doreen D, New York, New Jersey here. Joel, I better see you May 19th, which is a Sunday, 12:30 p.m. The Museum of Jewish Heritage, Battery Park City. Carmen and I are going to be speaking. We've got a big national network news personality that's going to moderate our conversation. So please come to see us May 19th in New York City, the Museum of Jewish Heritage. And by the way, Dr. G, I'm going to have to, and this too, if you want to meet us at CrimeCon, it's not too late to get tickets to go, and you can use code STS at checkout. Use code STS. They gave us this code super late. If I had this code a few months ago, all the people from STS who are going could have used the code, but you guys have it now. If you haven't booked your tickets for CrimeCon, do use the STS code. It'll get you a discount. And it'll get us brownie points with CrimeCon. So that's always a good thing. I love CrimeCon. I'm excited to go. So moving on with this press conference, the FBI was there, a field agent named Sonia Garcia. She also basically came out and said, look, I want to express sincere condolences that the FBI were asked to assist beginning April 4th, which was about 10 days ago. And she too used the word closure, that this provides a sense of closure. I'm kind of intrigued by the fact that both the OSBI and the FBI use that word, because that's a word that a lot of people, just that specific word, people don't like it, because these families of the victims are never, ever getting closure. She did go on to say that we are grieving with you today. But Michaela, what did the FBI, in your opinion, help with here? They started to assist April 4th. What is it about their resources that were applied here that weren't applied or couldn't have been applied by the OSBI?
Well, they have a lot of extra human power, boots on the ground. I mean, it's kind of an impersonal way to say it, but they have like a lot of extra human power, cross-jurisdictional things that they can do in multi-jurisdictions, whereas like everybody else there was just confined to the state of Oklahoma. I mean, they could be going into Kansas and Arkansas and nationwide. I mean, I'm sure there were probably some federal laws violated as well in this whole thing, although it looks like right now they're focusing more on the state laws directly. But they have a lot of, I mean, the feds have a lot more toys, tricks, experience typically, I mean, than the state and especially like the local agencies do. You know, especially, I mean, that's one reason, for example, why the sheriff's departments had asked for help from the OSBI, because it was still a state level crime that they were looking at, because they tend to have more experience than the smaller community police departments and sheriff's departments do. But the FBI really has a lot more extra stuff.
JPC, question for Dr. G. Can two narcissists live together, Dr. G? Or will they, it's a horrible thing to say on this show, will they murder each other? I mean,
so sorry, that shouldn't get a laugh out of me, but if they have a common victim, then they can work together. So in other words, like if you grow up in a household with two narcissistic parents and they can both mistreat the child, sure, they can work together and mistreat people. But if it's just the two of them, or they don't have that sort of common victim, then they're going to go at each other, and it never lasts. Or at least not happily. They can be miserable together. But yeah, two narcissists together is in the end, it never works well.
For the record, I'm not bringing this up. La Mesa is. Joel, I cannot wait for the Toronto book signing. Got your T-shirt and a gift for Carm ready. That's so sweet. You don't have to get her anything. You can get me something, but not Carm. But that will be May 21st, and it is going to be at Queen's Bookstore. We're going to try to do a second thing while we're in Toronto, but Queen's Bookstore, May 21st. If you are a Canadian living in Toronto, please come see us. We would love to meet you. Matt Bully, he's the Texas County Sheriff, Dr. Michaela. He actually gave the most information of anyone. He said that, look, we received a call March 30th about this abandoned vehicle. Deputies immediately responded. We found things just didn't add up. We notified the OSBI. They ended up taking the lead. We searched 1 mile in each direction, got us to where we are today. So 1 mile, but we've come to learn that the bodies were found 8-something miles away. This is, again, super rural area. So Dr. Michaela, does it surprise you that the bodies, I mean, relatively speaking, 8 miles isn't that far away. Does it surprise you that they were that far away?
No, I mean, it really doesn't. I mean, given how far spread apart everybody lives out there, I don't even have a neighbor within a mile. Like, I mean, our closest neighbor is a mile away. Yeah, it's just like a mile away. So, I mean, and beyond that, I mean, it's miles away for any other neighbors. So, yeah, I mean, that doesn't really surprise me. Usually, I would say look at least about 10 miles in every direction. So, a circumference. I mean, and that would be in the city too. I mean, anywhere. But yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
The ex-Beatle is the DA in this district, Texas County, George Harrison. No, it's George Harrison Leaks the third. He is a district attorney, looks and sounds like a district attorney. He said that the files were all being kept under seal to protect kids and other people, but that they were unsealed today and would be available at the courthouse. By the way, the COE called the courthouse today and they said they've never had a busier day. This woman has worked there for 30 years, has never had a busier day. Imagine a typical day at this courthouse. And then after this case breaks and all the national media and podcasters are calling, she couldn't believe what was happening to her. People, he said, George Harrison Leaks here. The DA said, Michaela, and I thought this was interesting, that people thought law enforcement was asleep, but there were 100 law enforcement officers working night and day for 15 straight days, 24 hours a day. And again, I said this earlier, reminds me of the Brian Koberger case out of Idaho when the Moscow police, small little police department, were taking a lot of crap. But look, these guys did their job. They did it quickly, don't you think?
Well, and in this case, yes. And it does remind me, and I mentioned that too, of the Brian Koberger case where, yeah, I mean, everybody thought that they were asleep at the wheel, didn't know how to do it. And it turns out they were just kind of being quiet and laying low and then pouncing once they had all the evidence. I've had a case, however, and not just with the smaller police departments, but even like the bigger, like Oklahoma City and other, where nothing was ever done. We had a big case out of Wewoka. I mean, it was a manslaughter case. And the sheriff's department out there, and this was just recent. I mean, this was just from like 2023. And the sheriff's department out there thought that the OSBI had it. The OSBI thought that the sheriff's department had it. People were leaving this agency and transferring to another. Nobody had done anything. Nothing had been done. We had to help to dig up the information, present it to the undersheriff, who was very nice and really worked with us once she understood that nobody had done anything. But our client was distraught. I mean, her son had been killed, and she had been very distraught. She was living up in Colorado, and I felt terrible for her. But now they're actually pressing charges upon the person who had killed her son. But that took a long time. Like another case in Oklahoma City. I mean, it was just closed up, quickly boxed up for another client as a suicide. No, it wasn't. But okay, I mean, so every once in a while, you do get really good things happening. And I'm glad that that was the case in this circumstance.
This is a great question from Annie K. How would Dr. G suggest law enforcement conduct interviews with these four with their alternative beliefs? How do you need to approach these people?
A big part of it's going to be being very knowledgeable about what their beliefs are, because you got to understand what they're trying to say and like what's sort of underneath what they're trying to say, knowing the lingo, knowing the language. That's a big part of understanding cults, is knowing all the weird little symbols they believe and, you know, understanding certain terminologies they use. So, because without that, you can miss stuff. And so the approach is going to depend on the personality. So it's not going to be that you should go hard on everybody or whatever. It's going to be more being really knowledgeable about their weird little culture.
Michaela, I hate to harp on this. I brought it up a moment ago, but this question is much more streamlined and better than what I asked you. From Lindsay Hendricks here. The affidavit mentions that 5 people were involved in the homicides, and that includes the name Paul Grice. Any idea why Paul Grice evidently is not being charged as well? Is it possible we see more charges, do you think?
I think that's always possible. I mean, I haven't heard anything about Paul Grice. I mean, even looking online, I haven't seen anything about him other than it was mentioned. He was mentioned in the probable cause affidavit. I think he was a member of that group, the God's Misfits. I mean, I think that we know that, but it's not sounding like from the affidavit that he was actively involved in the murder necessarily. Perhaps was just a member of the group that was known. Is it possible that more charges could be coming forth? Possibly. Is it possible that he could be an informant or working with the police? Possibly, but we just don't know that at this time.
Another great question. We will wrap up shortly. The fastest 90 minutes of your day right here. It just happened. You didn't even know it. You know what? I don't want to name drop, but I will on this one. I spent Dr. G might get jealous right now. I spent 2 weeks with Muhammad Ali. You may have heard of him. 2 weeks. I did a profile on him, and he always told this joke. He would. I stood in the doorway, and he put his fist up. He had big bear paws. This is when he was starting to be a little hard to understand. And he'd go, "You see that, Joel? You see that, Joel?" And I was like, "What?" He's like, "I just hit you so fast you didn't even see it." And he wouldn't move his fist. But why did I bring that up? I have no idea. There was a comment that had to do with something related. It's
an awesome story, regardless. That's fantastic.
Yeah, but there was a comment that the COE just removed that was related to that story, and I have no idea what it was. But there you go. There's that story, and he signed. He was athlete of the century. He was on the cover of GQ, and he sent me gave me a beautifully signed copy of that. Oh yeah, fastest 90 minutes in true crime. That's why exactly. Fastest 90 minutes in true crime, as fast as a Muhammad Ali punch. That was cool. My kids won't even know who Muhammad Ali is. That's sad.
But one thing I wanted to throw out there, Joel, if you want, and don't feel obligated to do this, but if you want me to do a quick body language thing on their 4 mugshots, I'd be happy to before we wrap it up.
Let's do it. Hell yeah.
That sounds like fun, Doc. Let's do it.
They're the 4. Yeah. So let's.
So a big part of what I look at when we see still pictures is the eyebrows, right? Because the eyebrows say so much about how somebody's feeling. I'm really bad with the names right now, so I'm just gonna go by position. So beard dude on the left, his eyebrows look sad, like in a literal sense, like he looks very sad right there and scared. So this is so if we're to look at what he's probably feeling at that time, the shape of his eyebrows really do suggest sadness. There's really not any other reason you position your eyebrows like that.
There you go. That's a little better shot right there.
Now for her, the look and obviously they're taking a picture.
That's Granny Adams right there in the red. Granny Adams.
So Granny Adams, her look is surprise right now. So I've got the giggles. I apologize. I'm trying not to laugh. I don't know why it's wrong with me. But with the eyebrows up, we see a genuine look of surprise right there. Her eyes are a little bit more open. So let's look at the other two, and I can tell you a bit about them as well.
I'm immature, and I'm bringing you down to my level. Sorry, Patrick. Normally you're professional. Oh, hold up. Stop that COE. Okay, these two on the right.
Okay, so what's the guy's name on the far right? The mustache guy?
Twombly. Cole Twombly.
Okay, Cole. Okay, so as you mentioned earlier, Dr. M, there's a look of amusement, right? Like that's pretty clear, but there's also contempt, because all emotions are on both sides of the face. When you actually smile for real, both sides, you can see this is on the one side, and that's the only emotion that's on one side is contempt. So this is a look trying to look tough, trying to look contemptuous. I think it's an attempt to give off that look. Like, I don't care about this. As you can see with his eyebrows, not really much going on there. So he's not shocked, sad. He's not showing any anger. None of them are showing anger, which you see a lot of time in mugshots. You see people with their brow furrowed, with the corners of their mouth going down. And then the woman on the left of mustache guy,
she looks like the COE after the COE hates every photo I ever take of her. That's what the COE looks at me like after I take her picture. Well, go ahead, Dr. G.
So she's probably got the most neutral expression of everybody. So she's not showing a lot of specific emotion. So I have less comments to make on her, other than she's got her nose pointed up a little bit. Oftentimes we do that when we feel better than other people. So when you say, the expression of turning your nose up to someone, we literally do that. So when you're feeling better than somebody else, we actually do turn our nose up. So there's maybe a little bit of that going on. Maybe it's just how the picture was taken. But I just thought I'd throw that out there about my first impression of these guys.
Dr. G, I had no idea that you read still photos. I thought it was only video, but already I'm thinking ahead. If there are cameras in the courtroom, maybe in a loving way, I compared you. But if cameras are in the courtroom, which I assume they will be, maybe Dr. G will be kind enough to come back on, and we can break down some of the body language of these suspects. We'll definitely do that. This is a question. This is something that I would ask myself. I wonder what Paul Grice is doing and thinking right now. He's probably at a God's Misfits meeting. Ida Shaw here. This is an interesting comment. This may help you, Joel. Back to my small towns comment. Small towns are like an STS community, yes, Bigger cities are like Twitter. It's very well put, actually. And I appreciate that. And let's keep it small and quaint, because who wants to be X?
I'm good.
My kids were asking me if Elon Musk has any children, and I broke the news to them that he has 11 kids. I don't even know how this conversation came up. It came up last night. And I said, most of the kids' names you can't even pronounce because they are like named after computer code. And they started to Google it. And let's put it this way. They were actually happy that I'm their father and not Elon Musk. So I felt good about that. And I said to them, do you know he has $280 billion? And they didn't seem to care about that. So my kids are still grounded. Last but not least here, this guy who's the PIO, Hunter McKee, who looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger's love child, some people say. He was asked a ton of questions at the end of this press conference and basically said, look, I can't answer any of these questions. One that I thought was interesting, were the bodies found together and how were they positioned, things of that nature. He said that they only received several tips over the course of this investigation, which is maybe not that unusual considering we're just talking about a very small remote area, and then could not speak at all to the physical evidence. He did say that family and friends were incredibly helpful. So that is basically a bow on what happened today. And you heard that they're going to be in court, these suspects, come Wednesday. Thursday, is it, Michaela?
Wednesday.
Wednesday. And are we expecting all four to be there on Wednesday?
I believe so.
And I know you're, a bunch of hours away, but in terms of media crush for this area, this is going to be something that they've never experienced before, I assume.
Yeah, it's a pretty big event, if you will, for a town of that size and one that's that remote in the panhandle of the state where most people don't ever really venture to unless they're traveling to Texas. I mean, that was why I went through there, because I was traveling to Texas or to Kansas or something. I mean, yeah, it's not really a big tourist town, if you will.
Muhammad Ali was great. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. There will never be another Muhammad Ali. I'm rhyming, and I don't even mean to, but that there will never be. Funny thing is, too, he knew I was of the Jewish faith, but every day he'd say, hey, Joel, come over here. I can't do a Muhammad Ali impression, but he would say, let's study some Quran. And we would sit there and read a couple of lines. He was a very religious guy. The Thrilla in Manila. This is it. Who is your favorite all-time boxer, Dr. G, since I know you're a huge fight fan?
Oh, this is sort of a generic answer, but I love Mike Tyson's in the 80s Mike Tyson.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. I did a thing over Mike Tyson in the 7th grade. That was what I was going to say too.
Now, let me ask you this. What does Mike Tyson do to Jake Paul in their fight this July?
Nothing. Jake Paul's going to win, honestly.
You think so?
Yeah, I really do. If it's you can't smoke marijuana every day and take mushrooms and then have the stamina to fight somebody half your age. It's just not going to
work. Final question. Do you think that knockout by Max Holloway of Justin Gaethje was the greatest knockout in UFC history?
Absolutely. So if I know for the fairly low number of people watching this that also watched that fight, it was incredible. It really was.
For the two people in SDS who watched that fight, besides, what does that say, Michaela? I can't read that.
I'm in martial arts too. I do MMA stuff in martial
arts.
Oh,
wow. Okay.
That's cool. So does Dr. G.
I do too. Yeah.
So I'll be in Texas in May 20th or so. So if you're going to be down there for the competition, we'll see you there.
I love it. Is it, Dr. G, the most important question of all tonight, is it possible to beat an addiction to STS?
It's incurable. No, you're stuck here.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. G. I did not pay him to say that. Someone else said the ear biter. Look, we all have our flaws in life. I'm going to get hate mail on this one. Look, Mike Tyson did do horrible things in life. There's no denying it, but I met him recently too. I don't know if Dr. G knows this. I interviewed Mike Tyson 2 years ago in Miami at a psychedelics conference. I'll send you that picture later, Dr. G. He was the sweetest guy to me. He was so nice. Muhammad Ali gave me a peck on the cheek when I went to shake his hand after a book signing at Barnes & Noble on Fifth Avenue. Let me tell you something. When I walked the streets of New York City with Muhammad Ali, and I'd never seen, it was the housekeepers at the hotel to the CEOs on Fifth Avenue. Everyone came up to him. Didn't matter your culture, your background, your race, your nothing. Everyone came up to him, and it was amazing to see. And like I said, I don't think that there will ever be another Muhammad Ali. How we got to Muhammad Ali from the murder of two moms in Oklahoma, I'm not exactly sure, but huge thanks, as always. My dad trained champion Ike McQuiggan. Oh, this is Ireland. Could be. I don't know Irish fighters except for Conor McGregor. But I know there have been some great ones. That must have been quite the experience. Amazing, Joel. Yes, thank you. It was. Huge thanks. Was it Ali who said he didn't win in the ring? He won in practice. He might have said something along those lines, possibly, maybe. Mike Tyson, I think. Mike Tyson's famous line is, everybody has a game plan until you get punched in the face. And if I ever got punched in the face by Mike Tyson, I would no longer be here because I would be dead. And Kelley saying, I got Joe Frazier's autograph in the 70s, and he was such a big jerk. That stinks when you meet people and they are not cool. So I'm sorry to hear that. Barry McQuiggan, Joel, to look him up. I don't know him. I should, but I don't. Dom's mom saying it all. Fastest 90 minutes. I have no more voice left. Another amazing panel. It's not just our tagline, it's our reality. Best guest in true crime. Love you, America. Now that I found out Scott Peterson's in court tomorrow and Rex Sherman's in court on Wednesday, we're probably going to do something on Rex on Wednesday. And we're actually doing a Koberger show on Wednesday because there's going to be some news on him that I got a little jump start on. So follow us for that. Of course, the victims in all this right here, Jilian Kelley, 39, who was really just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and Veronica Butler, the mother of 6 children combined, who now no longer have a mother. That's just, I can't stomach it. That is the worst. But Paula said it probably best. Night, y'all. I didn't bring it up. Thanks to, there it is. Thanks to, there it is. There it is. There, I can't find it. I couldn't get it in time there. Sorry. But I can take this one. Great show, Joel and COE, and our best guests. Big thanks, as always, to Dr. G, who I'll be texting about fights tonight, and, of course, Dr. Michaela Samarosing. Dr. G, make sure you check out his YouTube channel, Dr. G Explains, and Michaela Samarosing. She's got the largest private eye firm in Oklahoma. If you need help, you have to call her. We will see you tomorrow. I'll post the stuff on Twitter at Podcast SDS, on Instagram at Surviving the Survivor. Love you, America. Love you, Georgia, where Dr. G is. Love you, Oklahoma. And, of course, let us keep Veronica and Jilian in our thoughts tonight. What a horrific ending to an all-around horrible story. But thank you all for being here. Love you. See you tomorrow.